Before I forget, guys, quick reminder, I'm doing non-farm tomorrow as an event. You can buy it from our website, the Market Sniper. Pop on over to there. Trading days, non-farm will be one. It'll be 2.5 hours with me. We'll look at the crypto realm and what we think to do next. So go and grab that, and you'll find it over there. And what can you do? You can do that, and also our next program, the Trading Metamorphosis program, where you can then become part of our community, and the base camp, the WhatsApp groups, etc., with all the heads up on what we're doing, the voicemails, etc., and sharing and growing together. You can become part of that. Just look at the products on the Trading Metamorphosis side, and you can get all the information you need. So that's a reminder. Non-farm tomorrow. You can still get on that. And the Trading Metamorphosis program, you'll be able to ask questions on non-farm. On our takes, we'll be reviewing the crypto markets and the excitement that has occurred on Bitcoin. Enjoy this clip that you're about to see. Hey guys, how are you? Polonex, Bitcoin Tether, you're with the Crypto Sniper. So we had a great break in the end. We did pretty well, but we didn't get everything 100% right. It's made its target, and we took a lot off there. And of course, there was strong overperformance. We had proper melt up, and had a little bit of FOMO for taking 50% of the Bitcoin off at that point and parking in Tether. The volatility and the splat down has come, but it came later. It first ran 7275. So our primary scenario was that there would probably be a bit of a rest after our target. We'd overperform to somewhere around here. We'd have a pullback, and then we'd take our time about getting into the 7,000, 7,500 plus forecast we had. But in fact, lack of imagination, that potentially it could rip out the top. And we had a rising wedge here that does often lead to a pop out the top and then a later smash down. What's happened is that it went really far out, and it's done both targets as part of the finishing act here. So we've had a 7280. But I want to highlight to you that for us, this doesn't mean the business is done. We did call for a 190. Whoop, I don't want to do that. Let's undo that if we can. We didn't want to call for an end to everything, but we have now made, at one point, you saw there was a 193 there in the market cap. So I warned that we felt that 191 to 193 would be the number in the market cap before we got a possibility of a reasonably strong rest. And that has now occurred. So a lot of targets have now been made, and you're getting volatility now to the downside. So that's your H1. That was a lovely setup, by the way. It has made target, and it has got volatile. So that 193 call when we were sitting at 170, then at 173, and repeated at 178, and then at 183, 184 yesterday. It's now been done. You got your 194. It looks like the peak there in terms of target. Remember, targets are always slightly overrun. You've just seen that in the Bitcoin mark. So when we had that level just through there, this should now potentially be a cautionary level for us. Now is not the time to go overweight Bitcoin and to be shorting the alts in our view, although the alts have suffered immensely. There may be possibility they get a little bit of a respite, or all are going to go down. So there's two scenarios here. Bitcoin takes a break and rests and pulls back somewhat, or and the alts hold their own in dollar terms maybe and don't do much. The alts go up, or the alts go down. They can all do all three. In other words, if the alts go down and Bitcoin is going down, we could have quite a pullback on the overall market cap. That said, that was a decent quality pattern. I don't feel it has to be extreme. So I think Bitcoin will rest a little and chop around for a bit. The alts have certainly suffered on this. So the shorts on the likes of Ripple and Ethereum, I mean, boy, we were beating up on Ethereum and Ripple. I've said some pretty strong things that are, that they would sell off and make lower lows. And now that we just got the volatility, it's the first time there's a little bit of a pump. But you actually traded as low as 2.4 on Ripple. That once trade 24. So that is 1/10 of what it once was. That's the power of overperformance downside inverted HVF setups, and that biased us since May to the short side on Ripple. That's been something we were able to exploit a reasonable amount, and might have exploited even more. It's even defied our own belief. And then when you look at Ethereum, this was right down to 3.7%, 3.77, so let's call it 3.8% of a Bitcoin, when it was once 15% of a Bitcoin. You know, you're sitting at sub fours. That is 75% plus haircut on your Bitcoin value had you just hodled in Ethereum. I'm saying this, and I've said it many times, and I don't want to over repeat, and maybe I'm getting into that point where I am, because some people watch all the clips, some people might be seeing this for the first time, but there is a real value to knowing when to take money off the table. If you think hodl is your best investment strategy and that's all you know to do, then I will say this to you: look at the hodlers of Ethereum. Some people might have bought, if you bought at the top at 15%, you will have washed away 75% plus of your Bitcoin value of your account. So 100 Bitcoin into Ethereum at 15, and you've run right down. Let's take it where it is now at 4. Essentially, it's almost 16. It's essentially you've lost 70% of your Bitcoin. You would have 30 Bitcoin valuation left. Do you want to see that happen again? Knowing when to bias away from, and we've consistently suggested people should bias away from Ethereum and Ripple. Ripple, I mean, that is just obscene, the amount that it lost. We had our first inverted here. So Bitfinex is not the exchange we were measuring Ripple on. We were measuring it on others, Polynex. But we've just had that one lose 90%. So if you're 70% on Ethereum, imagine losing 90% of your Bitcoin value because you hodled on Ripple. Thankfully, there's less people that wanted to hodl on Ripple than Ethereum, but you get what I'm saying. So the value of knowing how to wait for this year was key. Largely, in the macro, we haven't got everything right. That's the last impression I want to give. But largely in terms of the confirmations we get with our market cap analysis that I've shown you, and the big moves, we actually made money on the long side of a Ripple. It pumped before. It went to number 2 ahead of Ethereum. We rolled into Ethereum. We got a pump on Ethereum, a huge pump. I was one move early out of Ethereum. It went another zip higher, and then it went down, 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 down. We biased to bearish on them, and we rolled into Bitcoin. We had a number of very profitable little Neo, BCC, etc. pumps that we took on smaller time frames. But those were the macro moves that we caught for H1 rolling into H2. We've biased Bitcoin long with shorts on the ones that we used to go long on, Ethereum and Ripple. And this has served us exceedingly well. As I say, we don't always get it 100% right. You could ask, I felt a little bit of FOMO, we're human, when you went up here, but it's melt up price behavior and it's pulled down really hard. Can we overperform on the market cap, including Bitcoin chart? We could, but this sign of volatility is a warning. So I would say you don't want to be playing that. That target now has been made. When we have an HVF target made, we back off into defense, we let things pull back and reset up. And as for the alts, they've sold off really hard, but that doesn't mean they're a buy just because they've sold off really hard. We could have contraction on both the alts and Bitcoin, and that market cap could back off from the 200 billion mark. That could be quite a strong potential scenario. So these are all the things you want to consider. What's your modeling? What scenarios are you looking at? And don't assume because it's sold off, that means it's going to become a pump rally. People are going to be looking at these market cap highs and saying, this is a touch frothy for now. I think if I were a gambling man, on balance of probabilities, and there's 3 ways that this can go, I would say I don't think the alts are going to go into a major bull run now because Bitcoin's having a rest. I would say that's least likely, probably at about 15-20%. This structure here was not nearly as bullish. Could they just about hold their own in fiat terms and maybe gain a little bit back in Bitcoin terms? They could be. That could happen. Could Bitcoin pull back and they still feel a little bit of suffrage? I think so. In other words, that's just a spike. Now it's not a new trend. We don't need the first 10 or 15% of any new trends in the likes of Ripple and Ethereum. And both those charts are very, very similar. over here. It's just no longer one-sided to the downside. So it becomes a less interesting market. We need to see more guidance, but it can even go a little bit lower, or it can just churn and chop and recover a minor degree. You don't need to play in that game. We're high probability traders. So I think a bit of defense is not a bad idea at this point. Now we've done really, really well. Hold on to those highs. Don't get overconfident. Overconfidence begets future underperformance. Don't go destroy value on your BTC highs if you've done any of these things out of bullishness and confidence. It's time to be calm and maybe a bit defensive, and for me that involves parking some of that money in a little bit of fiat. We have non-farm tomorrow with a dollar number. So those are my thoughts, but it's not constituted as advice. This is my thoughts, thinking in terms of how I'll be managing my pot, and you guys do what you want to do.